The DIESOL podcast,
Digital integration in English as a second or other language.
episode 56, interview with Michelle Queter.
Hello and welcome to DIESOL. This is episode 56. We are your hosts. I'm Brent Warner.
And I'm Michelle Reyes.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're pretty close at this point. How are you?
Wait, this is not our New Year episode.
It's not Happy New Year, but we're getting towards Happy New Year. We'll be a week away from New Year by the time this launches. No, 2 weeks away.
2022. Oh my gosh, 2022. So I'm still in Japan.
Yeah.
Things are still good. The weather's not as cold as I was told it would be, but maybe next month. How's California?
It's all right. I got a booster shot the other day, and I've been in and out from my booster. So I don't know. I'm hot right now, but I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. My feet are cold, so just depends on which part of the body I'm pointing at.
Well, I'm glad you got your booster shot.
Yeah, I'm glad. So I'm traveling over the break, and so I am really, all these little crazy things coming out, and the Omicron and all these things. So
oh yeah, that's right. That's the latest. Yeah, that's the latest. Japan's shut its borders now.
Great.
So they had just opened and they closed immediately. So
as they do. Yeah. All right. So, Michelle.
Yes.
What do we got today?
Today we have a colleague and dear friend of mine, and also supporter of the show, Michelle Queter.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi, hello, welcome.
Hi, Michelle.
Sorry.
And I just want
having me.
Yeah, well, you're welcoming us into your house with that's how Zoom meetings work at this point, right? We're all in each other's business, so that's fine.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I want to say that I met Michelle at one of she had a workshop on gamification, and I went and I took away so many ideas, and I used them. This was almost 3 years ago, and I use them all the time. So she, when she found out we had a podcast, she was, telling everyone to listen, and she was just super excited. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing, because I was very shy at the time, and we had just sort of kind of in the early stages of DIESOL podcast. But she has been a supporter from day one, and so I'm really excited that we have her on the show.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, I'm still a supporter, and I have your sticker and the pin on my bulletin board.
Nice.
Where all my instructors sign in for the day.
Awesome. Yeah. So Michelle, I'm my brain right now is like, little, I guess, COVID fog brain, but I don't think we've talked a lot about we talked about game-based learning. Kate Toll and I came on and talked about game-based learning. I don't think we've talked a lot about gamification. But I think, Michelle, you have a lot of expertise, a lot of experience with all of these things, doing presentations, everything. And so, I think we should just jump into it and start kind of, making sure that people understand the terminology. I do find, in my head, I'm like, oh, I know what these mean, but I do find that a lot of people still get confused or not sure about the language around some of these things. So, can you break down some of what you do and what's what all the gamification stuff is?
Sure. So first, we can talk about what is the definition of game. So a game is a contest or challenge governed by rules, which results in a quantifiable outcome. And if we apply that to the classroom, we can call it gamification. Gamification is where we're employing the elements, mechanics, and aspects of games to enhance non-game situations. And so in the classroom, there are two ways to use games. We can use them as in systematic ways. There's systematic gamification, and there's also content gamification. And so systematic gamification is where you use game-like elements or mechanics and aspects to enhance your classroom, such as putting students in teams, or giving homework, giving game points for homework completed, using stickers, prizes. And then, so that's systematic gamification. And then if you use content gamification, you're actually using games to review and deliver content, such as review games, role plays, different games like bird card games, conversation cards, things like that.
I love that you started with the systematic one, because to me, you get some resistance from teachers. They're like, "Oh, we're not going to do games. That's kids stuff, right?" And then it's like, "Oh, but like the things you're describing, you're like putting people in teams and, you know, giving, you know, stickers and little stickies away. Like that stuff is, you know, it's like, oh, you're already applying some of these mechanics, right?" And so
exactly.
So I think that's an interesting kind of you know, a foot in the door maybe for some people to kind of recognize they're already doing some of the stuff.
Well, even with systematic gamification, you know, things such as using colorful paper, using play, these are all ways to make the classroom fun. And people, you know, do those kind of automatically. They're not thinking that they're gamification, but they really are parts of gamification.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great kind of frame to approach it to. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and if we think about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that once, you know, for, because I've also found resistance, maybe not so much now after COVID and having to really rethink the way that we do our lessons, especially online, how to motivate students. I think having the definition really shows that, no, it's not just games. It doesn't mean playing board games. A lot of people tell me, oh, I do gamification too. I have Scrabble. Or I have, and it's like, let's have a little longer conversation. So that's what I was going to say. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's good. So in my classroom, when I was teaching, I'm currently supervising instructors right now, but when I was teaching, I would set up my classroom in a gamification style from the first day to the last day. Oh, really? And what I did was, first of all, I put all my students into teams, and teams could be anywhere from 2 students to 3 students. And I would make colored name tags or table tents for those students. And so then the students would sit with their teammate. And on Monday, we would start with a game, and the teams would work on a game, and then they would get points. And so I had a colored sheet of paper on the wall for each team. So I would have the reds, the blues, and the greens, for example. And we would already, on day one, on first period, we would be writing some points on the what we call is the leaderboard. Those colored sheets are the leaderboard where you have the points. And then I would explain that that the class was going to be run like gamification, and so that throughout the day we would play different games, and we would put those points on the leaderboard. And then for their homework, students who did all their homework would get. Let me see. I can't remember the exact points I had, but I think it was something like 3 points. Let's say they would get 3 points. And if they only did part of their homework, then their team would get 2 points. But if they didn't do their homework, their team would lose 2 points. Ooh, okay. And so, and so when I would go around checking the homework in the morning, you know, it was really fun to then say, oh, okay. So, and the 2 teammates would have to rely on each other, because if your teammate didn't do his homework, then that's going to affect the score on the leaderboard. And so that was always fun to look at the homework and add up the points. And then sometimes I would include the quiz scores at the end of the week. If you got like in the 80s, your team would get 8 points. But sometimes if the quiz scores didn't come out in time, then I'd just have to be flexible and not include that. But basically, at the end of the week, the winning team with the most points would get to choose a prize. I had a basket of Dollar Tree prizes. And some of our students are adults and they have children. So maybe I might have a child's book in there, or maybe a flashlight or a notebook, or, some kind of office supplies. And so the students had a lot of fun, winning and taking bragging rights. And then the next week, I would probably have the same students again, and I would make sure to put them in new teams. And of course, I would try to look for strengths. You want to put students together that can help each other be better in the classroom. And so you might see that, this student needs to work with this other one so they can have a stronger team and maybe, ultimately learn more.
So when you set this up, then every activity that you do in the class kind of leads into the games somehow, or goes to something, or you kind of pick and choose as you go?
I pick and choose. I wouldn't say every game or every activity. Just you need to have some activities during the day that will lead to the points, because you want them to maintain excitement about the gamification. But then, one of the things is, in a gamification classroom, not all activities have to be point-based. Like, you might take a bean bag and throw it around. You have everybody stand up and throw it around the circle. But that game doesn't garner points. It's just kind of a game-like activity where maybe you're doing verb tenses. Like, I'm going to start with verb 1, and then I throw the bean bag to the next student who does verb 2. Like, I say eat, he has to say ate. He throws it to another one, eaten. So those are practicing, actual verb tenses in the classroom, just kind of the memory part of it. But you don't have to have points. It's just fun. And so you create a gamification environment that is based on this idea of fun incorporated into the learning day.
Yeah, Michelle, I like that you say that, because oftentimes, and I've seen this with maybe newer teachers or teachers who are just starting out with gamification, and then they get sort of caught up in the points and what to do with the points. Mm-hmm. and that at the end of the day, the purpose is so that students can let down their affective filter and have fun while they're, with friendly competition while they are studying a language. So if students put too much emphasis on points, or teachers put too much emphasis on points, then it might be detrimental and it might actually backfire.
Yeah. So you want to do your learning activities that you need to do during the day, but then having 1 or 2 opportunities for the points. And then another important thing to think about with points is you don't want those leaderboards to be too distant from one another. For example, if one team has 100 and the other one has 25, they may lose interest in your whole gamification. So when you play games, you want to make sure that the point spreads aren't too far. Like if you play Kahoot, you could say, okay, the winning team is going to get 3 points. The second, because they have different, like a winner, and then the second one, and then the third, like that. So you could say, okay, winner's getting 3 points, second is 2 points, third is 1 point. So you're not really working with 100 points there. You're keeping the scores pretty close, and I've found that that's really important for maintaining interest in the games.
Yeah, I was thinking of I use quizzes, right? So similar to Kahoot, but one of the nice features on quizzes is that when you're showing the leaderboard, you can also click top 5 only. So sometimes students don't, like, if they're not in the top 5, they don't lose the motivation because they think they might be able to get up there, right?
Right.
As compared to, like, hey, here's everybody, here's all 25 students, and you're at the very bottom. They might not know that with quizzes. So I think, like, little features like that can be really valuable as a way to kind of say, hey, you're still in the game, right? Like, there's no giving up just because you're not in the top 5 or 3 or whatever it is, because you never know if you might pop up there and kind of make your way up towards the top of the screen too.
Yeah, very good. Another tip that I found or figured out is that you want to put the onus of the rules back on the teams, because if you don't, they're going to put you in the middle, and you'll be like, teacher, they're looking in their dictionary. That's not fair. So what you do is you put the onus back on the team. Okay, well, what do you guys think? Do we want to allow looking in the dictionary as part of the rules, or do we want to say that that's not going to be a part of the rules? And so then they have to decide, and they have to police each other on that, more or less. And so, I think that's one of the things that for a new teacher, when you're playing games, you can find yourself painted into a corner where people start getting mad, like, that's not fair. So always put it back on them to create the rules and maintain the rules.
I like that, because that also lets you kind of work on the fly as you need to make changes for everything, right?
Yes. And that's another thing, come up with your general rules and then see what works for your group. I mean, if the rules of a game that you found on the internet it don't really work for your team, then, change it up a little bit and keep it fun and light for you and the students.
So just out of curiosity, does this also, I don't know if there's like theory behind this or any ideas, but like for like classroom management too, right? Like do teachers, if you're applying these things, and then like you kind of said, well, hey, you didn't do the homework, so you lose points, right? That might be a form of classroom management, but maybe also like, I don't know, depending. My classes, it doesn't happen so much because I work with, college and adults, and they're relatively respectful, but like with kids, maybe it's like, hey, you're acting out in a bad way. And like, I don't know, is there any aspect like that of classroom management that goes into these as well? Or do you kind of shy away from that side of things, or,
Well, I don't have any specific tips regarding classroom management, but there are a lot of benefits to gamification. Like, it motivates students to action. They engage with meaningful risk. It fosters cooperation and encouragement. And so if you've got students who are in an environment where they feel like they're having fun and they have a team member, because it builds camaraderie, I think they're going to be more likely to to behave in the class, because they kind of have a good thing going on. You don't want to be the negative energy in the classroom. And also, I try to get the students to encourage each other to do their homework, because it'll be like, well, oh, your team's losing 2 points now. And so the other member of the team can say, hey, come on, we want to win.
Right.
And so, I think that's an interesting question that you ask, and I'm sure there's probably research out there, or something based on that.
Yeah, I like the idea. You said one, of the numbers of benefits, one of them you said was engage with meaningful risk. I love that idea. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, if you're playing a game, say a content game where you're reviewing questions from the grammar exercise or something, you're going to be asked a question, and since you're playing a game, it's kind of fun, and you're going to guess if you don't know the answer, and you might not get the answer correct, but at least there's at least you're kind of involved in more of a game environment, which is light and supportive versus just going around a table, no, that's not right. Can, try again. And then I think also the reward of finding the right answer is much more fulfilling, because then everybody cheers for you and you get a point for your team. And so, and I think, game playing is something where it's not, there is a risk in any game, even like games of chance, and so it's more natural to take small risks when you're playing a game.
Right. And that's what makes it fun too, right? Like it's because hey, I might lose, I might win, like and the more you're like, depending on the games or the way that you're doing it, the more risk you're willing to take, maybe the more you can kind of gain points or move up, or whatever the reward might be, but also the other way around too.
So
go ahead.
Oh, Michelle, I was going to say your leaderboard idea with using colorful paper. I was, in Qatar, and I was working with a group that was, they were just hard to motivate. And then I didn't have a lot of technology at that time, but I did have construction paper, and all I had was a paper clip, and I drew a little crown and put it on the paper clip, and that's how I was moving around who was currently in the lead.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And I didn't do it for homework because that was a battle I didn't want to, but especially with, hard to motivate students. But I did do it with reviews. And so we would, in the morning, we'd review what we did the previous day, and the students would know that, hey, this is the time where we're going to earn points. I need to make sure that this time I'm going to earn more points for my team. And it worked, and they liked it, and I kept it, and I didn't follow it every single day, but I would do it every time we had a review, and they knew. And so that was one way. And they would, every once in a while they'd look at the wall and they'd say, Team Blue is not doing well today. We're going to beat you. And it wasn't even it was a friendly competition, and there was a minimal risk. But like you said, it definitely built camaraderie. It helped, especially when you're trying to teach the students. Sometimes, hey, help each other, right? Right.
Yeah, that's great. I like your idea of putting a little symbol on the winning, the team that has the highest score at the moment. That's really. I
just thought whoever is winning, you're the king, or I would say you're the boss. You get to choose whatever song I'm going to play at the break. If I was going to play, little things, because I didn't have prizes to give them, but a lot of them wanted to play. It's a mobile game, PUBG, on their phones. That was like the hottest thing at the moment. And I would say, okay, whatever team gets the most points, they get an extra 5 minutes during the break to play their game, and that did it. That did it.
Prizes. See, that's a key. Prizes. I gave Dollar Tree prizes, but you could give other prizes, like you could give a free homework coupon, or like you said, an extra little few minutes on break. Maybe one idea that I used until I learned that I shouldn't use it was if they you could earn a coin that would be good for one tardy. So if you came in late, you could pay a coin. And in fact, I did that before I had full gamification. I gave students 3 coins, 3 wooden nickels, such as 3 wooden nickels. And then if they were late, they owed me the wooden nickel. And or if they didn't have any wooden nickels left, their friend could give me one of their wooden nickels.
Oh.
And so then you're building camaraderie. But don't make the wooden nickels too cute, because some students start to feel attached to their wooden nickels. It's like, what? I know I was late, but I want to keep my wooden nickel as well.
They're going to start coming in. They're going to start earning those nickels just to keep them.
Yeah.
not used.
So I wanted to also mention something about gamification theories, because when we look at games, we can look at the theory of scaffolding. Because if you think about games, they have clues, feedback, levels, and mastery. So you can actually scaffold a lesson through the design of your game. There's also the self-determination theory, where students learn about and feel autonomous and learn competence. They can feel both of those when they're playing games. There's, of course, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, where the intrinsic, the student really likes interacting with people, and they like that feeling of teamwork. So that's motivating in itself, or the extrinsic, winning a prize. There's also kind of the theory of episodic memory, when we humans are enjoying ourselves, are feeling our senses, we tend to remember situations more strongly than if we're just kind of bored, looking at a book or something. And so, and then another thing is spaced retrieval practice. So there was a book. Let's see, where are my sources here? There was a book called Make It Stick.
Oh, yeah.
The Science of Successful Learning. Did you read that one?
Chip and Dan Heath, I believe. Is that right? Or no, it's
this one is Brown, Rodinger, Daniel.
Oh, okay. I read that one too. That one's the blue one. It's got the blue one with the star on it, right?
Well, I read the Cliff Notes, so
okay.
I don't know. But
well, see, I've got a sensory perception connection to the physical book.
There you go. But there's a story in there about baseball players who practice their curveballs. And it said that if you just throw curveball after curveball after curveball, the player, will get better at it. But then when they're in a game, when they go to hitting the curveball, they've forgotten that muscle memory, and then they're not as good at it. So what you need to do is practice throwing them a variety of balls over time. And sometimes it's the curveball, so that they can learn how to do curveballs when they're not expecting them. And so if we use that concept in games, like review games, like you were saying, Esol, that, when you review something, it's just practice, and you're also seeing it outside of its context. Perhaps you've got a variety of questions in your game over all the grammar that you learned over the week. So you're not just in your mind frame of, oh, this is going to be a verb tense question, so you're actually having to kind of be more flexible and, what is that word I'm looking for? I can't think of it, but let's go with flexible.
Yeah. I like that idea. That I remember reading about that, and I was like, there's an interesting concept that I should be doing. I'm not always great about doing it, but I love the idea of bringing it back. I think in some of the literature they call it interleaving, right? Where it's like you kind of spiral back, and then you come back and you touch that point again, right? And so one of the things I have this longer term goal. It shouldn't be that hard, but like, if you have, for example, quizzes or whatever, like a quiz online in your class, that you're also bringing back questions from previous quizzes that they would have done. So in my case, because I have students for the whole semester, I can do that, and I should be able to set that up. So it's like, okay, here's one or two questions from the previous one, right? So it's like you're now we're doing, we started with the subject verb agreement, and now the next time we're doing noun clauses. And so in the noun clause quiz, there's one or two subject verb agreement questions that come back into it. So they're always kind of like, oh, wait a second, I can't just let those things go. I have to be ready to continue to respond to this question as well.
Yes.
And so I love that idea, because it makes total sense to do it in a game, right? Where it's like, oh, like when I play a video game, right, I'll work on that challenge and try to figure it out, and then I get done with it. I'm like, okay, I'm done. But then I might have a similar type, but a little bit of a different, setting, or like I'm in a different base, or, like the floor layout is a little bit different, but I'm still trying to do the same fundamental things, right? And it's still fun for me to play the game in that different setting, but still using those previous skills and the new variation on it.
Yeah, very well said. I thought of that word, by the way. It's spontaneous.
Oh.
All the adrenaline released in your brain because you just solved something.
Yes. Well, and I had a quote here by Peter Brown, which from that book, Make It Stick. It says, it's not just what you know, but how you practice what you know that determines how well the learning serves you later.
Yes, I have to agree with that.
So, Michelle, if we can take a step back, you kind of mentioned earlier, you said before you kind of went full gamification in your class, or before your whole class was gamified, you kind of built into it. So for somebody who's maybe saying like, I want to start playing with this, but I'm not going to build my entire class or everything around this. How would you advise people to kind of get started, and then steps towards growth if they think like, hey, this is going to be something that I do want to implement fully?
Yeah, well, I think, a beginning step is play a game, come up with a game. And there's a lot of very simple games that you could do that you don't have to even have points for, which, like what I was telling you before, throwing a beanbag. There's other games like you could do color call. You throw a beanbag and you say blue, and then you throw the beanbag to a student and they have to come up with any object that's blue. And then they keep throwing it around until someone can't think of an object, and then you change the color. So that is just like a playful environment, just something that takes the edge off. And just start small. Every Monday I played a game that I had 2 dice. One had numbers and one had letters. And so they would roll 1 letter and 1 number. So you'd have such as 4L, for example. And they would have to, in 1 minute, have to come up with as many words as they could that had 4 characters and then the letter L. And then they, when the timeline or the time was done, they all wrote their words on the board, and then kind of like categories where you eliminate any duplicates. And then you've got, you could have points for that game. But then if you don't want to have a full gamification classroom, then the game ends there, and somebody won and somebody lost and they had fun, and that's it. So just being open to bringing a game here and there into the classroom is going to give you more confidence, because sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm not really a game person because they don't feel comfortable. And I think one of the, if I would can reiterate that other thing I said about put the rules on them, because in my early years of teaching, that was always the fact that I would get painted into a corner with the rules made it unfun for me, because students would be like, that's not fair. And so you have to just turn it back on them. Well, okay, we'll see. Does everyone think that's fair? Or if you've got one team, you'll have one team who just does something and you have the other team say, well, are you in agreement with that? Are you going to let them have that? And that's negotiation, So anyway, that's what I would say, start small and do a little game here and there. Just make it light. And then as you gain more confidence, you might want to try, putting the scores on the pieces of paper. And keep those scores pretty close, because like I said before, if somebody's at 100 and someone else is at 25, then they're not going to keep trying. They're going to feel lost.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Michelle, I wanted to maybe ask, what was your experience with gamification while you were teaching online? That's one that I struggled with because part of it was I wasn't ready to go fully online, so I had to scramble to get all of that, ready. And then I sort of lost my motive. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to motivate the students. I just didn't have the time to plan that out. And so I'm wondering if you had any tips or things that you learned through that experience. And you're not teaching online anymore.
No,
right?
I'm not.
Yeah.
And I should say that, when I went online, I didn't gamify my classroom either, because we were just trying to stay, ahead of the game, just finding out what to do, how to do it. But I did create a game in PowerPoint, and it's your basic questions and multiple choice questions. And I would project that game on the screen, and we played that game. And so I did use games in the Zoom classroom. And then, like, you could also play Kahoot, because they can see the game on their phone. Well, sometimes that got tricky, because you'd have the game showing up on the Zoom screen, and then they would have to maybe toggle. I can't remember now how we did that, but we did play Zoom. We
Kahoot.
did play Kahoot. Yeah, play Kahoot.
It's okay. Yeah, no, I that's one thing that when I think back now, and I think, what would I do to gamify? I had a hard time, like you said, trying to survive and stay consistent with a routine that worked for everyone. And also, we had so much screen time. And so that was one of the things that I just felt burnt out. I couldn't find my whatever muse I normally get from the students or from other colleagues. It wasn't quite there. Brent, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is a good little advertisement for one of your previous shows with Robert Jonte. I remember he came on here and gave you guys lots of great ideas in the Zoom environment using the chat.
Yeah, he had a ton of great ones. Yeah.
So that's another episode. We'll put it on the show notes. So those of you who want to listen in, he's got a lot of ideas.
Yeah, the struggle for me, I think, with all of the games or doing them online was, even now I still feel like I can set something up totally on the fly in person, where it's like, okay, here are a couple little erasers and a pen, and those are your game pieces. Like Esol was talking about the paperclip or something, like real quick and easy to provide things to students, and they're like manipulable, and they can talk with, they can do things immediately with them. But it is much, much harder digitally to do that. You have to be totally prepared ahead of time and say, like, okay, here's how it's going to work, and here's how you're going to interact with these things. And it's like, I did struggle a lot with that, which I agree. Like the interview with Robert was great, because it's like, you don't have to have all the stuff prepared, right? But in my head, I know, because I grew up playing games, physical games. I grew up like with all of those things, and so it's really easy to work with the physical things. Whereas even, of course, we love the technology and all the digital things. We're into it, but it's also not as immediate or intuitive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, before we kind of switch out here, I wanted to just hear, like, what are your, maybe, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 favorite games that just like, hey, this is a go-to. It works every time. I know you've mentioned a few already, but I don't know if you have any ones where you're like, oh, like, I love this. It always works. What are your go-tos?
There was a game I invented when I was in Saudi Arabia, because all I had was the whiteboard. And I drew a grid, like a 10 by 10 grid. And then I would put parts of speech, vocabulary words in their different parts of speech groups on the board, like verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs. And then I would take sentences from the book and let me say, okay, I would take sentences from the book and I would choose the vocabulary words within the sentences, and I would make that a blank. And I would put the word that belongs in the blank on the board in the correct part of speech. Then I would read these questions and the students had to fill in the blank. So it's a listening activity, but they can see the choices are on the board in the parts of speech. And so then if they get the answer right, they get to go up to the grid and put a dot of their color. And so the idea is to get 3 dots in a row, and you get a point for that. And the way the game works is if the students don't get the question correct, then we just move on to the next question. And then I recycle around to the questions. So I keep the questions going. And as they're going through the game, they're eliminating words. So it gets easier. And then the game part of it, of putting the dots, they realize that they can be competitive because they can stop somebody from getting their 3 dots by putting their own dot there. And so it became, really just an exciting game because they would plot on where they were going to put their dots, but at the same time they were practicing the vocabulary. And if I didn't have equal teams, when I didn't have an equal team, or I could have a student who's higher than the others, I would have that student reading those questions instead of me being the MC. Have a student be the MC. And that's like one of my favorite games.
Yeah, like a Connect 4.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like a Connect 4.
Uh-huh.
Sabotage. The sabotage feels better than the
and then so you can do, and then bean bags are really good. And then there's a game called Tornado where
that's my favorite. I learned it from you. I'm so glad you're sharing this one. I do this. I've done this in every country I've been to. It's a hit.
Well, and I learned that from somebody else, of course. So you've got some cards that are 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, and then a tornado card. And so again, you have whatever game you're playing and they answer the questions. And then if they get the question right, they get to, I have the cards face down taped onto the whiteboard. So then they go and they pick a card. And if it's 20, then they get 20 points. If it's 30, they get 30, like that. But if they get the tornado, that's when it's really exciting because they get to steal 20 points from another team.
Oh.
So the team loses their 20 and you gain their 20. So that's, the part that is competitive and fun, and they get excited about which card, are they going to pull. And then, of course, someone always tries to pretend like they're cheating or even try to cheat. And you have to say, step back from that card. But that's a really good one.
How many
too.
cards do you normally what's the balance of those cards that you normally put up?
I think there's 4 tornadoes and then 4 of each. Is that how you do it, Esol?
I love this game so much because it's easy to set up, and all I needed was Post-its.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tornado card, I changed it to a sticker with a smiley face. So they always say, oh, it's the Joker or it's the smiley face. Mm-hmm. And I do random. So the first time we play, I put maybe about 2-3 per 20 questions or so. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll put more in because they eventually calculate. They start to say, how many are there and what's our chance of winning and what's our chance of sabotaging someone. And it just gets really competitive, but it's a fun competitive because they may have worked so hard to get this card and then they flip it over and it's a 1-pointer. And then they all laugh, and it's just, but I've had students who scored, who took 1, 3, 5, 1, 1. And then at the end, they got the tornado card and got to steal. And that win felt so good. And And sometimes they'll say, oh, there's only 3. They already chose 3. We don't have a chance to win anymore. And I'll say, nope, this time I put in 6, and they get super excited. So I mix it. Sometimes I don't put the 20 pointers. I put more of the ones, because they do they start to find patterns. I notice that they start to look which one has the wrinkly corner what point the one with the wrinkly corner is. And I've had a student actually steal a smiley face and use it the next day.
They stuck it on the card for themselves.
No, he took the whole card and he pulled it out of nowhere. And I said, wait a minute. He had taken it the day before. So we have to establish rules. And like you said, ask them, hey, what are the rules? Because they'll get close to the card and they'll try to lift it. I'll say, if you touch it, that's the card you choose.
Right.
You can't because they'll sit there and they'll say that one or that one or that. How about this one? But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I use it a lot for reviews or for concepts where I need to reteach. And now it was the concepts that were harder for them to understand. And that's when it really sticks, because then they remember and they're repeating and they're all competing against each other. And they know we talked about this yesterday. It was the one we missed on the test. And so it actually reinforces the material.
Yeah. And their emotions are high and they're feeling and sensing. And so that helps with memory retention as well.
I love it. So there's a lot to play with here. There's a lot to kind of explore and kind of keep figuring out. I love the idea that you can just implement it small or big as you're comfortable with those things. And so I think we're going to have to come back to this conversation more. I think there's just so much to talk about, but we are running low on time. So let's shift over and kind of wrap things up.
As always, we love your support for the show. If you want to take some time to support us, an iTunes review does wonders. You could win a free pin. If you'd rather support us by donating some money, we do have a Patreon and we have Buy Me a Coffee. And we know that Brent is a coffee snob. He will not judge your coffee.
No, I will not. I will be appreciative of it. Yeah, absolutely. We love it. And, this could be a holiday gift. If you want to give us a holiday gift, I'm not asking for the money. It's for the review. The review would be a wonderful holiday gift if you're so inclined, if you're feeling the spirit of the season.
Don't be a Scrooge with those reviews. Okay, it is time for our fun finds, and this time I have an app, but it's a language app. Of course, I'm in Japan, and I'm brushing up on my Japanese. And ever since the last time that I've studied Japanese, there's been so much more added. There's so many apps and games out there. I thought you meant they added
more Japanese to the language.
Well, they've added more Japanese to the language.
They've been busy, yeah.
And I had never used this before, but it is the JLPT test app.
Oh, yeah.
And that's for those of you who want to actually take a test and learn what level you're in, if you need it for work or just for fun. I'm doing it for fun because I'm reviewing. And it's a pretty robust app. At the time when I was studying, I didn't have these. I had the little Denshi Jisho, the dictionary, the electronic dictionary. But now it's on my phone and I can search and I can test myself, and it's pretty well done. So it's, I guess, the equivalent of what you would be doing in a TOEFL app or I don't know, on any other English testing app. So it's free.
Oh, nice. That's the JLPT, Japanese Language Proficiency Test. Great. Michelle, how about you?
Well, my fun find is called Lingo Pie, and it's an application where you can watch television shows in the language of your choice. They have French, Portuguese, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish. So my second language is French, and it's the entire program, and sometimes it's a series of shows or a movie, and they have a running script on the screen, and so you can see all the words that they're saying, and you can stop it and click back at a previous line, and it'll go back. And sometimes when you click on the subtitles on the screen itself, it'll make you a flashcard. So I've created 95 flashcards. And as I was looking at this application, it has gamification, because it's got a leaderboard where it says that, like it'll say, I'm maybe, what is it saying? I'm 475 or something, there's that many people who are faster than me or who are watching more hours. It tells me how many hours I've watched. It tells me how many flashcards I've learned. And so it'll create flashcards for the shows. Now, unfortunately, it is not free. On Black Friday, they had like a 65% off deal. And I think I paid $50 for a year. And sometimes it's a little bit buggy, but I'm hoping that they're working out those bugs as they get more people signed up.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
I think we mentioned it in passing once, briefly, because I do remember seeing an ad for it on Instagram or something, and then kind of like, yeah, okay. And so, cool. I'm glad to hear that you had a little bit of experience with that. And so it's called Lingo Pie.
Lingo Pie.
Cool. So mine is a city. I'm gonna just do New York City. I'm
Wow, you found New York City.
Have you ever heard of it?
And it's fun.
Yeah.
I guess, while we're adding Japanese to the Japanese language, might as well.
We might as well add a city that you've never heard of. I'm going to New York, and probably, around the time that people are listening to this episode, I will probably be there. So looking forward to a vacation and doing some touristy stuff and some less touristy stuff. But it'll be a good way to wrap up the year and just kind of get my mind out of the suburbs and into the city. So New York City.
Sounds nice.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. As always, we are welcoming reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you're giving us a shout out any other way, be sure to tag us on social media. We are on all the platforms.
We also have a Patreon. If you want to go check that out, we've got some of the interviews, the extra interviews, which Michelle, we will do with you briefly if you're so open to that. Sure. They're just fun little flash interviews. And of course, you can find the show notes over at diesel.org/56. And you can listen to us at VoiceEd Canada. That's voiced.ca. You can find us on Twitter. The show is at DieselPod, and I am at Brent G. Warner.
I'm Michelle at IXY_Pixie. That's IXY_PIXY. And Michelle, where can they find you?
They can find me at www.englishpractice.org.
Ooh.
In French, thank you is merci. Merci for tuning in to the Diesel podcast.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
See you in 2022.
Woo-hoo.